Hey guys, Zane here with another One Take review, and today I want to talk about Pearl Jam's 10. If you couldn't tell by the way that I pronounced this album's title, I'm not a big fan of it personally. In fact, when people ask me who I think are the most overrated artists of all time, Pearl Jam may be the very first that come to mind. I've just truly never understood their popularity, the acclaim, and even their influence to some extent. I just truly do not get the appeal of this band, and certainly not 10, but as I was thinking that recently, it kind of dawned on me I haven't listened to a full Pearl Jam record in a little while, and as such, I decided to revisit 10. You know, it's a classic undeniably, whether I like it or not. And because of that, I decided to revisit it. Now, firstly, before I get into the actual depth of the review itself, let me just say I'm a very, very picky listener when it comes to grunge, and while I do very much appreciate and even to some extent admire the musicianship and songwriting of bands like Alice in Chains and Soundgarden and even Stone Temple Pilots, there's just a lot of grunge bands that have never really done it for me. Bush have never really reached my own personal levels of expectations for them musically, and even Nirvana to some extent is kind of overrated, albeit enjoyable. And I'll even admit that when I began to revisit 10, I actually started to wonder if I had maybe found a new appreciation for Pearl Jam as a collective, as the opening track here, Once, is kinda great. It's not a groundbreaking or even super unique tune in general, but I do think that Once is great fun, and it actually features some of the best musicianship that Pearl Jam have ever demonstrated. As the record went on, however, I began to revert back to my previous stance on 10 and Pearl Jam as a whole, which is simply, eh. My primary problem with 10 as a record is also something that shows up in the rest of Pearl Jam's discography, which is just simply uninteresting instrumentals, and I will say, first of all, the actual instrumental individuals within Pearl Jam are extremely talented. Never let it be said that they lack talent, because they are. But that's what makes Pearl Jam such a disappointing band to me, the fact that you have genuinely talented individuals that are capable of delivering interesting instrumentation, and you demote them to just creating bland 90s alternative rock that could blend in with a car commercial at this point. It just completely defeats the purpose of having talented band members within your group. A lot of the songs here have a major lack in emotional connection in the instrumentation, and songs like Deep even have these epic, ripping guitar solos that also just feel forced and very fake overall. Maybe 10 and even Pearl Jam as a band would be a bit better if the individual members of the band were given a bit more time to really show off their chops as musicians, but as it stands, 10 just kind of sounds like a cookie-cutter example of pretty much every 90s grunge album that wasn't made by Alice in Chains or Soundgarden or Stone Temple Pilots. The worst part about Pearl Jam, the thing that absolutely ruins them for me, is none other than vocalist Eddie Vedder, who may be actually one of the worst vocalists I've ever had the displeasure of experiencing. He often gets listed as one of the greatest vocalists in the history of rock music, and it truly baffles me to no end, because not only is his voice lacking any sense of uniqueness that gave his peers like Scott Weiland and Chris Cornell the upper, sort of higher ground, I guess, but there's also the fact that his pronunciation is grating at best. Instead of just plainly, clearly pronouncing things or distorting them in however fashion he chooses, Eddie Vedder decides to do both at the same time, which I guess is sort of unique-ish, but it just sounds like a drunken guy going up and doing karaoke to budget Nirvana instrumental. But then again, I guess that makes sense considering Eddie Vedder's voice in and of itself is what would the equivalent to Lane Staley's Dollar Tree voice be. I mean, really, every time I listen to Pearl Jam, I just think I could be listening to Alice in Chains right now. I could be listening to Puddle of Mudd right now, and I don't even want to listen to Puddle of Mudd. I just truly, there's nothing remotely unique about this band, and Eddie Vedder as a vocalist just destroys any redeeming qualities that they have. I don't think that you need to be possible to understand vocally to make very good music. You have a wide amount of very unintelligible vocalists like Elizabeth Fraser that have done great music in the past, even with the lack of understanding of their lyricism. But it feels like Pearl Jam is the place where you actually do need to experience the lyricism to get the full effect of what they're going for, and just the lack of Eddie Vedder's ability to just pronounce things, it truly is just something that destroys any enjoyment this album could possibly give to me. Then again, I guess it doesn't matter, because 10 also has painfully average lyricism as well. I mean, thanks to Vedder's voice, you don't have to experience it, but it's not even worth going to the AZ lyrics page of Pearl Jam's work on 10 to find the lyrics, because it's uninteresting and they have nothing important to say 9 times out of 10. Even songs like the incredibly emotional Alive or the very serious Jeremy both just feel incredibly lacking and don't really deliver on these otherwise promising themes and tones that could be used to create what is very powerful grunge. I mean, really, the Ramones saying that they wanted to sniff some glue on their debut album made me more engaged than Pearl Jam do here. The more emotional songs fail to deliver any sort of connection with the listener, and the more serious songs fail by just being half hearted attempts to create something that's seemingly mature for the grunge sound. It just completely flops in both categories. Even still, the songwriting of 10 is probably its best factor, and just looking at how average the songwriting here is, that is not a good thing. Overall, I think that 10 is a woefully overrated record, and there's nothing that's being done here that bands like Stone Temple Pilots didn't do significantly better within the same decade, nonetheless. In theory, Pearl Jam's debut should have been great. I mean, they had a youthful energy that was still in them, and ignoring Eddie Vedder's god-awful vocals, there's a lineup of incredibly talented musicians here, but unfortunately, this just comes across as bland and uninspired, even by 1991 grunge standards. In fact, I think that 10 would have been best kept in 1991, and it does genuinely baffle me that so many people consider this to be a masterpiece and a landmark album. And no matter how many albums or figures that it sells, I will still consider Pearl Jam maybe the single most overrated rock band of all time. And with that being said, I'm going to give this album 2.5 stars out of 5. It just creates nothing. It arouses no emotions in me, and it almost kind of angers me at some points, but I don't feel right in giving it any lower than that, because it's not a bad album, and if you do enjoy grunge, you might enjoy this, but at the same time, it truly amounts to nothing in my eyes, and again, because of that, 2.5 stars out of 5. That being said, that's the end of this review, and I'll see you guys in the next one.